Hola, buenas tardes. Vamos a dar comienzo a la...
We're going to start the third session of the World Conference on Bioethics. Sorry, apologies, because my phone is ringing. And now, Professor Mr. Jesus Aquilino Fernandez is going to chair this panel. He was at in the Philosophy University of Oviedo. So he will organize the participation of all the participants. And you have to try to keep calm, not to worry. You're going to do it really well. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you all. We have a busy afternoon with 3 presentations. The first one is by the students of Mar de Niebla, which is an association. They will talk about your technology versus my future. Technology word friendly, and girls and boys, teenagers and young people, and Mar de Niebla. Hello, I am Ayanire. And to start, thank you very much for being here and good afternoon. Firstly, we wanted to mention that we represent the Foundation Mar de Niebla that is giving us an opportunity to participate at the World Conference on Bioethics. And to tell you our experiences living in the eastern side of Gijón, a quarter. I am Evelyn, and we are the Foundation Mar de Niebla. We are in the suburb of La Calzada. We are girls, boys, and teenagers. Today we're here Samuel, Jesus, myself, Evelyn, Iago, Marcos, Sarah, Janere, and Irona. We belong to Mar de Niebla, that is an association that provides support to boys and girls up to the second level of the primary school education, and also to high school kids in terms of leisure activities. I am Bruna. We're going to talk about a very important issue. She's talking, sorry, in Portuguese. We do not translate from Portuguese into English or Spanish. I'm sorry. We will continue when they talk in either in Spanish or English.
E agora passamos a explicar o que descobrimos.
No nos gusta
We don't like industrial pollution, the non-recycling, the pollution from the cars or other vehicles that use coal or petrol, because that affects the air we breathe, our beaches. You can see dirt on the window sills. It also affects the animals, underground life. So our suggestion is to use bicycles, so that we should have more bike lanes, and people should use the electric cars. Options. The generations of girls, boys, and teenagers are concerned about our future and the future of the earth. our country, our city, and our quota. Science and technology make possible a life of human beings that is less polluting, industrial pollution. We are going to explain how to improve environment using the new technologies and common sense, and applying common sense. Good afternoon, I am Marcos and I am in charge of sharing with you the proposals to avoid problems resulting from pollution and the solutions that young people can provide to fight against pollution. The main issues are the following: coal on the beaches, dirt on window sills and windows due to factories and plants, and the air pollution that we, the youth, are breathing. Our solutions to fight against the pollution coming from industries are the following. One of the solutions we can find in terms of the waste caused by industries are the coal warehouses. They are big warehouses that can store and preserve the tons and mountains of coal so that the air cannot filter that pollution and that pollution does not reach the cities. Next solution we can find are the filters to purify smokes. They are filters that can release a less polluted smoke. For example, Arcelor, one of the industries that is causing a greatest impact in the city of Gijón. How to pollute less in our everyday life. How to solve it? We need less energies to use the same resources to generate oxygen for inner spaces, not to use plastic bags, generate less waste and recycle. How to pollute less in our everyday life, how to solve it. Collective transportation means less emissions, less traffic. Fabric bags, more uses and greater resistance. Paper bags, easier to be recycled. Proximity trade, less pollution. How to pollute less in our everyday life. Using collective transportation means less emission, less traffic, not to use plastic bags. So we should use fabric bags. Also use paper bags. We have to buy local products, less pollution. We have to use bulbs, less consumption. We need less energy to use the same resources. We need to use plants also in inner spaces. We have to generate oxygen in inner spaces. We have to use recycled paper. We use less energy to get that paper. We have to generate less waste than recycling. Objects that do not pollute, for example, a shower with an atomizer, a toothbrush made of wood, vases or bowls made of plastic, stainless steel bottles, wood plates, solar charger. The use of means of transportation means that do not pollute. For example, the bicycle, scooter, or which is the motorbike, skaters, a metro underground bus, skateboards, etc. Thank you so much for your attention.
Muchas gracias por vuestra presentación.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I can see that you are very much aware of these problems in terms of the environment. I don't know whether there is any question from the audience or any comment, or maybe someone who is watching us via streaming want to ask a question or make a comment. Is there any question coming from the social media? Would you like to make any comment, those of you who are here in the venue? Is there anything that you would like to comment on?
Bueno, como aportación,
Well, as a way of contribution, I'd like to say that I think it is a bit irresponsible not to have all the filters in all the smoke chimneys. Because many of us, boys and girls or teenagers, could be suffering those consequences, and we may have a lot of pollution in our lungs. So maybe with this project we can change things.
¿Quieren hacer algún comentario? ¿Ah?
Yes, we're going to ask you some questions. Well, it seems that we do not realize, but there are many people who are dying of pollution because they are breathing pollutants. Because as we do not have pure air, clean air, some people are going to get sick. And sometimes they can even die. Well, maybe we are not aware of that fact, but I think we should be aware of that fact.
¿Vosotros contamináis?
Do you pollute?
¿A quién va la pregunta? ¿A todos? ¿Hay alguien que quiera responderla?
Who are you addressing the question to? Anyone would like to answer it? Well, firstly, thank you very much to you all for your contributions, because I think we all have to reflect upon things that seem to be very simple, but they are not that simple. Do you pollute? Yes, I think so. We do pollute. And you have really done something very important. You have, told us to think a little bit and to be aware of our behavior. You talk about proximity trade. You talk about responsible consumption, and it is really great that you kind of exercise your citizenship, because adults usually talk about the future, not the future generation, etc., etc. But our actions are going to have an impact on your future. We all pollute. You have raised your hand and stood up and saying, well, we're talking about filters and and air pollution, etc., etc. For example, the use of bicycles, collective transportation means. But first of all, we have to, well, look into our awareness or consciousness and see what we do every day and how we are polluting every day to try to provoke a shift. As you know, we are an animal with some reasoning or some kind of a brain that allows us to be reasonable. We also use energy from the exterior. Do you know where that energy comes from? Well, usually from products that are underground and they are waste of petrol, coal, and so on and so forth. Well, almost all of you who are here and all of the others are factory animals. We do very good things, but as many other plants and factories, we also have waste. We pollute. Well, almost everything that you wear or things that take you to work or things that will, you put on your feet and thanks to that you're walking, that is all made of material coming from plastic. And we all wear those products, but we live in the welfare. Welfare is like being between goods, no? To have food, to have a house, to have education, to have democracy. They are goods. Well, in that welfare state, we do not want to lose them. But for that, we wear some boots or shoes that are made of a material coming from petrol. But anyhow, the civilization we have right now is that one. And we have to get ready to know what we really need. What do we really need? And if we do not need everything, are we ready to just leave something behind so that there is not so much pollution on Earth? And we have to think about that, reflect upon that. And that is why at the Congress we have talked about a pedagogy of responsibility to know the world we want to have, of living together, and so that we all have enough goods to live, but not that some people have a lot and other people do not have much, or that we do not have so many goods that we are destroying the environment. Thank you. Well, I hope the pollution vanishes one day, and I hope our planet gets better, because we do not realize that we are polluting, but we are polluting a lot. Everybody's polluting a lot. And also pollution comes from the cars, people working at factories, plants, and all the smoke that is released. I hope all that vanishes and is finished very soon, so that nobody dies of this, no, of this pollution. Thank you very much. I'd like to mention that the non-polluting things should really be present in our everyday lives. Because the air is polluted and we are the ones causing that pollution, and there will be a day that the planet will be so polluted that it will be impossible to live on this planet. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this presentation, and now you are a bit more aware of the fact that we are exploiting and destroying our planet, and I hope you help us stop these actions. Thank you. I also wanted to thank you for being here and listening to us. I don't know whether you know, I hope you already know, that even bicycles that seem to be non-polluting, but the bicycles are also polluting because they are manufactured at plants or factories, and factories pollute. Everything pollutes. The thing that you think is less contaminating or polluting, they are also polluting. People who smoke, they are polluting as well, and they are also harming themselves. And that is all I wanted to say. Thank you so much. As my classmate mentioned, smoking is also very harmful, as well as harming the smokers. They also harm the exterior. Where do I want to get at? There are many different ways of polluting. So in the end, the planet is worse and worse. So maybe one day we cannot inhabit this planet. And we should make a greater effort so that we can live on a clean planet and there is not any problem in terms of pollution. Something I forgot to say before is the following. If we really reflect upon these topics, I think that is important. But if we try to raise awareness among the others, then we will do much better altogether. Polluting is wrong. And as my classmate mentioned, if you think something does not pollute, maybe that thing is polluting the most. I also forgot to say something before. I hope pollution finishes very soon and vanishes. And I hope that all of you help us build a cleaner planet. But we have to help each other. This is a collaborative work so that we stop these actions and we can build a better planet. Thank you. Any further question? Any comment? Okay, thank you so much again. I think there is a ray of hope when people like you are aware of this problem and you have things so clear. I think this is the best way to move on and to make headway. And I think we should all copy you, imitate you, to see how to avoid or prevent that negative trend. We all pollute to a greater or lesser extent, but if we are all aware of that pollution, and it is an honor that you are from here, from Asturias, from Gijón, those kids, being so smart, no? When reflecting upon this topic, although the problem is very complex, I'm sure there is a solution and we can have hope and trust. Thank you so much. It has been a real pleasure to have you here. This is your home. And the SIBI has different educational programs targeting kids and young people because you are the future and we need to face these issues with a future project or prospect or approach. Thank you so much.
Y ahora, como somos esclavos de...
And now we have 3 conferences, 3 talks left, and in the interest of time, let's move to the next intervention and watch a video by Santiago Grisolia, Prince of Asturias Award for Scientific Research, President of the Valencia Foundation of Advanced Studies, and he is going to share with us a few brief observations on science via video. It's a pleasure for us to have one of the most excellent scientists in Spain, Mr. Santiago Grisolia, who is with us this afternoon with his pre-recorded video.
No podía dejar de estar presente.
Good afternoon, everyone. As it couldn't be otherwise, I wanted to be at the World Conference on Bioethics of the SIBI, chaired by my dear friend, Mr. Marcelo Palacios, and even more so knowing that this is a tribute to my dear late Margarita Salas. This is the result of Herculean efforts since it had to be postponed due to the pandemic, like many other events.
Un ejemplo de lo que pone la unión de las tecnologías.
And the theme of this conference is one example of the work carried out by the National Technology Association to protect health and the environment. And this task requires excellency. Both the National Council of Scientific Research and the Spanish universities show strong commitment with the theme of this year's conference, day after day, even with a certain lack of financial support.
2%
Only 2% of the Spanish GDP is devoted to science. Margarita Salas's disciple, Carlos López Otín, from the University of Oviedo, and Dr. Barruenga and myself, together with many other scientists, have been demanding for that number to be increased to 3% for many years in order to boost research lines that could be the avant-garde of science here in Spain, with the work of a number of scientists who work without expecting any benefits. Now, in order to maintain a high quality of research, there is a new challenge that is before us, which is climate change, which results in droughts, storms, and many other natural disasters. Not to speak of the pandemic that we are suffering. I congratulate Dr. Palacios and the entire scientific committee of the SIBI for this conference, and I wish this conference is a total success. I wish that you reach many conclusions that can be disseminated to the public, because I'm sure they will be relevant, and the decisions that we take today will have an impact on tomorrow's future. Their Majesties, the King and Queen of Spain, accepted the presidency of honor of this conference, and I believe that is a true honor. I am I hold Asturias very close to my heart, like the king and queen do, and I remember the beautiful places and landscapes that Dr. Severo Ochoa showed me and took me to for many years. And I've also had friends that I've worked with in science and research thanks to the University of Oviedo in a number of projects initiated by Dr. Teodoro Lopez Cuesta. I remember a day we spent in Gijón at a research center of the city.
No, esto no es de
But this is not the reason of my participation at the conference. I would love to be there. Ethics is more important than ever to make proper use of science.
estaba en lo cierto.
My friend Isaac Asimov was right when he said that the saddest aspect of life at this moment, at this time, is that science compiles knowledge faster than the society compiles wisdom. And so the International Society on Bioethics becomes more and more necessary as every day goes by to compile the wisdom we need to make a proper use of technological progress. Thank you very much.
Ya.
Thank you, Santiago Grisolia, for those words. You've been a member of the scientific committee from the time the SIBI was founded. If we are ready, we can move to the next speaker who will hold the final address, Volney Garrafa, all the way from Brazil. He is the coordinator of the bioethics chair of the UNESCO and a member of the UNESCO's bioethics committee. And he works at the University of Brasilia, and his talk will be entitled Bioethics and the Use of New Biotechnologies in Medicine and the Environment to Progress Without Harming. Mr. Volney, it is a pleasure for us to have you with us. We would have loved to have you here in person, but it is all the same a pleasure to have you via streaming. Good afternoon, and you have the floor. Good afternoon, Jesus. Can you hear me well? Greetings to all my friends in Gijón. Unfortunately, we cannot be together in person, so I send my greetings to Dr. Marcelo Palacios, and I congratulate you on your phenomenal work. It is an honor to be here with you.
Por sus queridos amigos, ¿eh? Profesor Santiago. Profesor.
My dear friend from the International Bioethics Society, Santiago Grisolia, my dear friend, thank you very much. He is a huge figure in our country, in the Spanish research world, and for us, it is an honor that you are here at the closing session, who will be continued with the words of our friend Volney Garrafa from the University of Brasilia. Volney, I am moved to have you here with us, to see you on the screen. We have had so many discussions and fights even on behalf of bioethics. We have been traveling everywhere to disseminate the importance of bioethics, the balance between scientific progress and the respect of human rights. I wish you all the success in your next intervention, and I thank you both for dignifying the conference with your participation. Thank you. My dear Marcelo and all my friends at the SIBI in Gijón, in Spain, and everyone who is watching us, I thank you all for your participation and your attention. Can I start my presentation? Sure, go ahead. I will My presentation will include some introductory words, and then I will delve into more detail. The progress of scientific research, biotechnology, and health sciences have placed humankind in situations that weren't even imaginable. We have news from all over the world informing of new and known techniques, the discovery of more effective drugs, and the control of diseases that seem to be uncontrollable. If we consider all of these news, one becomes hopeful to improve the quality of life for all human beings, but on the other hand, one becomes aware that it also requires responsibility. It is vital for the ethics of responsibility, of social, scientific, and planet responsibility, is clearly stated and defended from the beginning of my presentation, including the limits of science. Ethics, the ethics of responsibility, and limits in manipulating light are fundamental at the beginning of this third millennium. Based on the framework of bioethics, I will address a number of topics. First, manipulation of life, limiting or controlling research, and secondly, the ethics of responsibility, social, scientific, technological, and environmental responsibility, both discussing the limits or controlling life on this planet, as well as defending an ethics of responsibility and treating social subjects, as well as the planetary ecosystems, are fundamental for the welfare of the future of humankind and the discovery of new biotechnologies in the medical and biological fields. So I will start with some introductory words to provide some background as to what we understand when we say bioethics today in 2021, which is not the same necessarily as the understanding we had of bioethics in the 1980s. So we need to understand the foundations, the basics of bioethics. Bioethics arrived to the academia and the scientific world not wanting to establish limits and regulate, codify everything. Quite on the contrary, it's interdisciplinary aspect and its role to in respecting moral pluralism and diversity of ideas in modern societies. There is a free, conscious desire of individuals and human societies as long as decisions do not go against the freedoms and rights of other peoples and societies. Bioethics is modern because it frees itself from its limitations. Humankind has walked a long way, and for bioethics, what is good or fair for a given moral community may not be good, correct, or fair for another moral community because their moralities can be very different according to their cultures. So instead of guiding itself with norms, limitations, or rules, bioethics must act positively with generosity. That's why the essence of bioethics is freedom. However, it is also important to be responsible with the consequences. Currently, bioethics is presented as the search of a responsible behavior by those who must decide on treatments, research projects, living organisms, or a relationship with humankind itself and the environment. Trying to get rid of all types of subjectivity is one of the basics of bioethics, but there is also emotions. Apart from honesty, scientific rigor, there are other pre-requirements for a good exercise of science, and bioethics includes other humane issues that are not included in traditional university curricula. The true fundamentals of bioethics can only be found in interdisciplinary actions, including medical sciences, biomedical sciences, but also, and more so now, other kinds of sciences. The UNESCO's Universal Declaration on Bioethics and Human Rights, which was enacted in Paris in 2005, 15 of its articles are principles. The speed of scientific and technological progress required that the different areas were adapted to a new reality, and bioethics was unable to avoid incorporating that generous proposal of conceptual expansion going from the exclusively biomedical and biotechnological matters to also include social issues, healthcare issues, and environmental issues, and that definitely changed the international bioethical agenda of the 21st century to go beyond the four traditional principles. Against this new background that the UNESCO set, philosophy was forced to move in an agile manner to adapt to the new concepts and all the changes that were taking place in everyday life, in people, and in communities. Many moral parameters were questioned, and a need to establish new ethical references was born to help society adapt to the new reality. What is good for one may not be good for the other, as we said before. And there are conflicts in ethical progress and the future of humankind and the balance of the planet are becoming more and more important. So there are many matters spanning from ethical dilemmas, for example, in assigning insufficient funds or funds for essential services to many other issues are the object of study of bioethics, which opened its fields of study, action, and influence substantially. And so the discussion on bioethics is trying to find balanced answers to the conflicts of this millennium that has just started. I apologize for my coughing. I am a little bit, I have a little cold. So the use of new technologies in medicine and the topic of the limits, do we have to limit or only control new biotechnologies? As for manipulation of life, be it animal or human, can be regarded from different perspectives: technological, political, social, moral perspective. As for the moral plurality that has been observed at the beginning of this millennium, it is necessary for the bioethics to include and incorporate all those probabilities. As for the future life of the planet, there shouldn't there be exact rules and limits that tell us where we can go? We have to bear in mind some arguments on complex dynamic systems, according to Gohan. To him, the complexity of things should be solved with general and simple principles, but that is not enough. For example, the complexity of the subatomic particle and the scientific and technological progress, while classic science dissolved the apparent complexity of some issues and focused on the laws of nature, the result of this was a complex thinking to face the complex reality. Complex doesn't necessarily mean complicated. Order, disorder, what's singular, what's general are paradoxes. Scientific analysis must include all of this complexity. According to Armand Jonas, the freedom of science plays a unique role in the freedom of humankind. That is a very serious question. Science must be free, or must it be controlled? And this is not limited by conflict with other rights. For Jonas, however, the observer will perceive a secret contamination between the two halves of this statement, that is, freedom and science. Because the special position the world has achieved thanks to the freedom of science is an external position, while aspiring to freedom to research is separated from the sphere of actions, because when it comes to acting, Jonas separates science and technology, and he defends a free science as long as it is conducted ethically, and a technology, the application of science, of knowledge, that is indeed controlled. So why, when it comes to acting, all freedom has a barrier, which is responsibilities, rules, and social considerations? That means a free science, but controlled technology. This is an interesting proposal by Jonas that I certainly relate with. The freedom of science is a supreme right in itself, even an obligation. Science must be free of each and every single barrier. When addressing ethics in the biotechnological era, Azars stated that it is about achieving a balance between the extreme power of technology and the consequences, as well as the whole of the society. Technological progress always refer to the freedom, the individual freedom and responsibility, as well as the ethical implication of those involved, especially decision makers. According to all of the above, those who defend a free development of science, even if in a participatory and responsible manner, it's not easy to live with limits. I don't really like the word limits. However, this is a topic that is hard to analyze, and that's why one has to find an expression or a sufficient moral enlightenment that responds to some of the questions. So I like to use the word limit between quotation marks because this gives me more freedom in my personal stance. I know that limits is a strong word, but there are some things that need to be controlled. That's why I use the quotation marks. So it is necessary to set wider categories that are not constraining for science, but can help with practical aspects with regards to respecting multicultural balance and the future welfare of the humankind and the planet. And now, moving to the ethics of responsibility, biotechnological responsibility, social responsibility, and environmental responsibility. I have mentioned what my opinion is when it comes to limits in the application of new biotechnologies. And now, I will address responsibility. For some people in the current times, there is a risk for technology to dominate the world, the societies, and nature with no scientific mediation. The potential genetic changes in plants, animals, and humans have already altered the course of history. In the words of sociologist Lucien Slens, he had a long narrative that is replaced by shorter, fragmented narratives. Today's history, has short narratives, contradicting the simplest theory of Francis Fukuyama on the end of history. Genetic engineers, nanotechnology, and so on and so forth are giving us back a new history. These new technologies are providing us with the marvels of a new history, and we need to learn how to control them, to regulate them responsibly. So, one, we have to overcome the depletion of the world and people and go back to the fundamentals, the essence of our life. In the face of the failures of history, ideology and human decisions are the only ones capable to recreate the image of the eternal return, the eternal permanence, and the search of our identity as a species. Hans Jonas, once again, was one of the 20th century's thinkers that detected the inspiration of terms that were traditionally used to talk about ethics and technoscientific progress. Jonas argues we still regard the technique from the point of view of the anthropological truth, be it in the realization of the true significance of what is human, or in the sense of denying nature or the humankind itself. So there is a big contradiction. However, the technique cannot be ethically subject or dominating. So there needs to be a balance. In other words, we must avoid with all our strengths those things that are linked to all those things that we need to preserve with all our forces. A philosophy of nature must articulate what the is with the must.
The great treatise on bioethics faced the difficulty that is to work between the certainty of benefits and the doubts on the limits. That is, there is a kind of contradiction. We have the benefits, but we have doubts on the limit. How far should we move on? How far should research move on? As for what should be controlled and how to control it. And in this border that is so insecure and with generous doses of goodwill, we will face the virtue of prudence. So if it is dark, it's best to walk slowly. And some people talk about genetic engineering, etc., that may move our DNA, the origin of our lives. So we have to be careful. But we should not be afraid of advances. This is my speech. Some radical critics, mainly from religious fundamentalism, think that most of the dangerous advances of civilization, it is impossible to think that our philosophy is going to be endless. As Rabbi Elizober at an international meeting on transgenic promoted by the Brazilian Institute some years ago, and where I participated, he spoke about nature, and he said nature is imperfect. It creates biological imperfections in the animal, plant, and human world. So the science has to fix those imperfections of nature. Nice statement. One of the commitments of the science is to give birth to future, anticipating to future, thinking of benefits, and giving a secure space or a safe space to the human being. The main question lies on establishing the limit or the specific point of up to what extent and when should advances of science be performed. We cannot perform actions just to make a group more privileged in detriment of the other. At this historical time, the man is open to responsibility and risk. The man has to pay attention to himself and the inheritors or the legacy that he's going to leave for future generations. He has to choose the action, the best action, as the guardian of our future. We are the responsible people, and we have to move forward, yes, but with certain control, with caution. So humanity has to reflect upon the previous ages and centuries on the principle of responsibility, scientific and social responsibility. Especially with relation to contradictions and problems that the humankind is facing nowadays. For Jonas, it is necessary that there is some ethics in rationality and that it advances with the same speed as the technological progress. Jonas affirms that philosophy can say specific things, but not some things are better than others. So who should say that this is better than the other? According to him, the collective progress can be thought in three different ways. First, through legislation of modern states. Second, on the basis of some values that can be incorporated in the law codes, and thirdly, in the public behavior of people. Let's try to summarize what I have said so far. It is necessary, on the one hand, not to stop the technological development, and on the other hand, although there are some doubts and uncertainties, we need to control with precaution all these advances. However, recent history with regard to research fields in human being and respect for environmental balance shows that human action has been much more aggressive and degrading than constructive, unfortunately. Human action on nature, especially. In this sense, it seems that we need to urge a shift, not only some old paradigm, but also some commitments in terms of social responsibilities. This does not mean that the existing values have to vanish, all of them at once. We only have to adapt to a new reality. We have to go from a free science to a responsible science. And what we need is a technology that is at the service of humanity and a democracy that is real, that promotes freedom and fairness or justice. However, these transformations are very difficult to be performed because the modernization has not been able to articulate the idea of the Aristotelic idea of happiness, and therefore the risk is the survival of the planet. The consequence of this alliance between science, technique, and economy in a framework of political liberalism and capitalism brought without any progress about development and political freedom, but unfortunately only for a very small part of the world, generating thus poverty, underdevelopment, and inequalities. Salvan tried to scale up the problem of necessity and impossibility of handling the age of techniques or saving that age, the age of bioethics. There is a subjectivist irrationalism that is incapable of facing the challenges. So we need other bases of the macro ethics of solidarity, responsibility, and planetarium responsibility, but we never get there. We are doing something wrong. We know that the developed countries are, well, causing harm, but they're still doing the same. Going back to Hormas, going back to the paragraph where he analyzes the freedom of research, lies in the fact that freedom and diversity, together with knowledge, has to be separated from the sphere of the action. That is, research is one thing, and the application of technology is another thing. Jonas concludes by saying that any freedom has also its limits. If science and such cannot be qualified ethically and morally, it can be qualified on the basis of the use that we make of science, the interests it serves, and the social consequences of its application. How many drugs do we have? New drugs, new inventions, and they are very similar to other existing drugs, and they are just well, inventing new drugs similar to the old ones just for the sake of making money. That's it. In this sense, I think it is essential to add some references in terms of the frontiers of development. We do not want to limit development or advances, but we have to establish some borders, as well as plurality of moral values, responsibility, and prudence. We have to add equity, that is the equal distribution of benefits of scientific advance, and justice. As well as participatory democracy and human values or human rights. Taking all this into account, thank you very much to the Congress of the SIBI that has given me the honor or the opportunity to participate at this Congress together with my friend, Dr. Palacios. So when faced by these new challenge, new technologies in the environment and biotechnologies, we have to act with caution, taking into account the principles of responsibility, control, and equity. And we have to try to identify what is necessary and what is not necessary. The fast intervention of scientific research, sometimes kind of accelerated, if you wish, in not only in a natural environment, but also a cultural and political one. This is so human as ethics. All these things are human, the same as ethics is human. We should establish a dialogue between biotechnosciences and ethics. And in those cases where it is not possible to establish that dialogue, the specific reference of that dialogue, has to look to other side. One of the problems related to this issue is not on the use or application of new technologies, as I said, but rather in its control. Control case by case. And duly framed. And this control that is public should take place at a different level. Control is not a technical control, but rather an ethical control. The limit is an ethical limit. I am not going to do this because I should not do it. I cannot surpass that limit because I could be causing many problems for future generations. The existence of bioethics does not depend on of science. Science and technology, however, cannot live without ethics. And I will finish with my conclusion. And the key of the question lies in the fact that within a state with values for humanity, ethics has a different positioning in comparison to science and the technique. The positioning of ethics is not before or after. No, it is not above or below. No, it is just different or differentiated. Ethics is also a preventive tool when faced by future and present abuses, which could result in the suffering of many societies. So, dear friends of the SIBI, This is the message I wanted to share with you. An honor to have participated at the closing ceremony of this important event. Thank you very much, my dear friend, our president, Dr. Marcelo Palacios. Thank you very much, Jesus Rosales. Well, a close friend, an old friend as well. And thank you very much to you all. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you very much. Volney, obviously, and as it was expected, an exceptional closing keynote speaker and talk. And it touches upon a very important topic, the dilemmas between ethics, bioethics, technological world, etc., etc. I don't know whether there is any question. Well, I think authorities are already here and they are waiting to come up to the panel to officially close the Congress. So thank you very much for being here. Volney, I will now stop here and we will start with the official closing ceremony of the 11th World Conference on Bioethics.
Sí. Buenas tardes.
Good evening. Mayor of Gijón and President of Foundation SIBI, President of the General Court of the Principality of Asturias, Mr. Marcelino Marcos. We are reaching the final part of this Congress that has had here for 3 days for experts from all over the world and kids even and young people very much concerned about the problem that has given the title to our Congress, that is to establish a responsible commitment worldwide on the rational use of biotechnologies in environment and biomedicine to protect the human being. The use of different biotechnologies, some of them emerging ones, especially in the field of medicine and environment, such as organ transplantation. This has been mentioned here, bioengineering, synthetic biology, genetically modified organisms, transgenic cellular reprogramming with reproducing aims, nanotechnology for treatment in clinics, production of vaccines, of vanguard drugs, or mainly also the gene editing that may result by means of simple mechanisms to the modification of any species, including the human species. And that's why, in this sense, it is essential, ladies and gentlemen, to have reliable information provided to the society. That's one of the conclusions we have reached in this Congress. Public debate as well on these aspects, that is a prerequisite. The World Registry of general access on the processes that are being performed in a scientific advance. That does not necessarily have to be interpreted always as a progress. The risk and benefit ratio, always applying the precautionary principle. And the scientific, social, and political control that is necessary to ensure that these biotechnologies are safe, efficient, and ethically acceptable. These are prerequisites that sometimes are not complied with, regardless of what many international documents have referred to, as for example, the Declaration of UNESCO on Genome and Human Rights, the use of the scientific know-how, the Declaration of UNO on cloning. the Council of Europe document on cloning, or also known as Convention of Asturias on Bioethics, as well as many other documents, and the Chart of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, Treaty of Nice in force since 2003, or other documents by UNICEF. But sometimes the non-compliance with what has been established in these norms to ensure scientific rigor in human beings and also animals, as I said, these norms are not complied with, and sometimes we face some actions that are not wished. And the discussions that have been held here aimed at reaching a commitment, independently of the fact that in some years we have a kind of a global legislation or norm regarding protection of human beings and nature when applying these technologies. And anyhow, probably it is useful so that that commitment is also a kind of a moral value statement. The pandemic, the tragedy that has really affected all the corners worldwide and provoking, resulting in millions of deaths and many, many other problems, health problems, sanitary crisis, health crisis, etc., etc. And also, well, many problems, financially speaking. People have entered even the poverty sphere. So it is necessary to have a new existential philosophy. And in this Congress, we have talked about pedagogy and philosophy of responsibility. It is necessary that we are all aware of how far human being can go with their actions or with his actions. Renoir, the famous French biologist, said once, human beings, since we have dominated genome, we thought we were God. And this is, well, very clarifying sentence, no, or statement, and it responds to reality. We talked about three main topics. One that is going to have its own, well, discussion sphere, that is the pandemic. But we also quoted the need of the labs, all the pharmaceutical labs, invest as much money as possible, and as much money as possible, at least as much money as they invested to produce vaccines, but they should also be producing other drugs that may be useful for the local or topical treatment of COVID-19 disease, because it is a disease that penetrates, the virus penetrates through the nose and mouth, and that is where it stays for some days. So that's why we have insisted on that. We need more research and more money to try to have a topical treatment. Secondly, something was also said about environmental pollution, the environmental pollution that sometimes may contribute to virus disseminating, and all the pathogens and all the elements obviously do not apply to rational norms or rules. They start to get mobilized and they disseminate and they spread out, and the pollution is making this much easier. We have to be very careful, because one of the most important impacts and effects is the greenhouse effect, and the possibility that at a certain point a climate change happens or occurs with catastrophic consequences. Gijón could be suffering, for example, if the water or the water level rises too much. Other countries would also suffer, no? Floods, etc., tsunamis, so on and so forth. Some people say that we are crazy, we think so, but other people think that we really have to be more aware of these facts and try to apply precautionary and preventive measures. The polluting phenomenon do not only come from the most pollutant countries, the most powerful as well, no? but also citizens. Citizens also pollute a lot in our everyday life. Welfare is to be between goods, no? That is to have a house, a car, food to go to school, shoes to go to do some sports, to go running, etc., etc. Many products come from the fossils that we use through petrol and other by-side products. So we all need to know what we should give away and just leave behind so that we do not increase pollution, environmental pollution. I'm going to be very brief in terms of acknowledgements because, you know, I always do them from the bottom of my heart and honesty. There are many, many entities that have helped us throughout these years to be perseverant in our work, and that our scientific committee will acquire some international prestige that nobody questions now. Santiago Rentería, Margarita Salas, Manuel Garafa, and from many other countries, 18 countries. We have people coming from 18 countries who have supported us, people who have played an essential role for us to be here, not only financially speaking. Of course, we need funds to do that work and to have a working team. Take it as a matter of fact that all the members of the scientific committee and I myself as the president, we do not get any salary or any money for our work. But having said that, there are many other expenses that we have to face. But it is not only the money that they give us, it is the stimuli, it is the empathy, it is to know that just one mere idea is not enough to move forward. You need someone to be pushing you forward all the time, people who believe in you. And in this sense, firstly, I have to quote the City Council of Gijón from the very first time, always manifested that the SIBI would end up being what it is now, heart and root of Gijón and Asturias. The SIBI is a good that belongs to Gijón and Asturias. And it will continue here, even when we are not here and other people come along. So thank you very much, Mayor. And also the government of the Principality of Asturias. We also owe the government of the Principality of Asturias at the beginning. Well, came as a member of the board, and also the court of the Principality of Asturias. Okay. Supporting us and giving us a stimulus, like, for example, with the famous research awards that we have been celebrating for so many years, and always counting on your support. We have also received other closer supports, the Fair of Gijón, the Trade Fair of Gijón. For many years, they have been helping us, supporting us, giving us some stimulus, pushing us to move forward. You cannot understand a work like the work that the SIBI does, or I don't know if you have visited the exhibition on the SIBI. The first Nobel Prize Award winner came Asturias Ochoa. He was the first one who came here because the SIBI asked him, or and him and many others, to come along, and they did not ask for any money. Also, UNESCO, the Council of Europe representatives have come along to be here with us and support our work. So therefore, thank you very much to all the entities, and also Foundation Areces. It is a foundation. I do not know personally any of its members. I think none of us, so none of the members of the scientific committee knows any of the members of Foundation Areces. And however, every year they support us financially. At the exhibition room, there is a video they sent us on their activities. So they really collaborate with our scientific projects, and we share lots of things. The scientific committee, of course, thank you very much. The members of the scientific committee usually come here once a year or twice a year with an agenda and they come from all over the world, from USA, Australia, Germany, African countries. And they come here and they meet with us for 2 days. They say I am a Tiran because I even ask them to work on Saturdays and Sunday morning. But of course, they also have other activities and they can only be here for a couple of days. So they come on Friday evening, we work on Saturday, Sunday.
And they have the honor to be received by the city hall very often. I was never received by any city hall when I was part of international associations and went to international conferences. I had to take care of myself. However, these people were received with the courtesy of the city council and even the regional president when the renowned researcher Wu Songhong came to Gijón. I think that is more important than any per diem because these people found it a true honor to be received by the authorities in a wonderful region such as ours. Where are you, Beatriz, who is a fundamental player at the SIBI? Beatriz, I thank you because I would say that the SIBI could have not existed without Beatriz at a given time. And I am not going to explain why, but yes, she is intelligent and she, with her devotion, makes it possible for the CV to move forward at full speed. And also Luis, who has joined us recently. And together we are learning what it is to make joint decisions and move forward, sharing opinions. And sometimes we don't even share the same opinion. I think it's great to hear and to be reminded that I need to work in team. To all sponsors and collaborators, to the Center of Teachers and Resources, I've always said that the SIBI's pedagogical program would be more than enough to justify its existence, to see the children here on stage and all the children that we've had participating in our program, in our pedagogical program throughout the years. And many of the teachers don't really have to do this because they're old enough already. But the truth is that they even spent extra overtime hours training their students who would participate at our exhibitions, and they learned how to discuss, how to speak, and how to ask. I've been astonished by the questions raised here today by the children. They are being trained by their teachers, and they feel more than capable to ask questions and question the current situation. And the Chamber of Commerce of Gijón, they have a wonderful team. I say this a lot, but if there's a place that is more than prepared for any situation, that is the Chamber of Commerce. Well, they are so efficient and they make the impossible look possible. So I would like to thank the entire team, the entire hierarchy at the Chamber of Commerce, because you are absolutely brilliant. And lastly, I have to say that it was an honor to work all these years at the International Society for Bioethics to set it in motion after the Asturias Convention on Human Rights and Biomedicine. I think that convention was signed in Oviedo because the Parliament was in Oviedo and the Council of Europe needed a parliament But that convention needed a gardener that would tend to its contents, and that I'm not saying this, but the same day the convention was signed, the Secretary General called it that. And so we all have to be proud of that. I've heard the Pope and the President of France say on 2 occasions that this could be one of the milestones of the history of humanity, the Declaration of the Rights of Children, the Declaration of the Rights of Women, and among others, the Convention on Human Rights and Biomedicine is of a great transcendence, and we must take care of it, and we must be proud that this is its home, its birthplace, and I hope that it will continue to help countries direct their human rights and biomedicine regulations. Thank you very much to all of you for your time, and thank you for everything you have done to make it possible for the SIBI to become what it has become today. That being said, and I apologize if I've been excessively emotional, I hand the floor to the rest of the speakers at the table who will be saying a few words to close this conference. Marcelino Marcos Lindes, please take the floor. Thank you very much, Marcelo. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it is no news that biotechnology has impacted our everyday life, and it has done so in many dimensions, such as animal lives, health, and so on and so forth. And it has become a true revolution in the past decades. In such difficult times, with the disruption of the coronavirus pandemic, let us note how important biotechnologies are in diagnosing diseases, obtaining organisms to manufacture and produce antibiotics, among many others. It goes without saying that in today's context, biotechnology has moved from playing a strategic role to playing a fundamental role. And I am sure that it will be one of the most desired investment areas. I will not question the importance of the modern biotechnology, which is a multidisciplinary science encompassing many other sciences, molecular genetics, process and chemical engineering, microbiology, immunology, electronics, or even IT. However, we should not forget about social concerns raised by certain biotechnological practices, perhaps because of a lack of values or tolerance, but mainly because there is no zero risk, especially if these biotechnologies are used in an irresponsible, irrational manner. Sometimes the consequences, the potential consequences of biotechnology are very worrisome. Some uses of biotechnologies could even pose a hazard, a danger, especially when they prioritize the purpose and they forget about the final aim, and when economic benefits are the main objective. To sum up, it becomes dangerous when science and progress intersect with power. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is not about highlighting or undermining biotechnologies, but rather use parameters to measure it in the face of technological progress, I think such questions are inevitable. With the expected benefits of biotechnologies, how many risks is society ready to take on? What is the price that we are ready to pay? Should we do everything that can be done? What are the interests that should be prioritized? Those of the businesses, those of the big capitals, or the interests of the public? Is it necessary to curb the progress in science and technologies? How to discuss the convenience of these advances to solve the great problems of Earth? Is man knowledgeable about the transformations that are taking place and will take place? These are many other questions in the area of biotechnologies, mainly with regards to the legitimacy to change human nature, the respect of human dignity, and decision-making processes when they could result in negative consequences for societies and individuals. In the face of all these questions, and the fact that human actions can alter vital processes, we must issue reasoned judgments. And to do that, we need bioethics. As long as biotechnologies questions certain anthropological principles, we will need bioethics to curb biotechnologies, to suggest binding decisions, and to control regulations and ensure equality in the access to, for example, vaccines against coronavirus, which are such a hot topic. Biotechnologies cannot be immune to ethical assessment fundamentally because it is an inherently social issue. I firmly believe that the bioethics committees and their initiatives, such as this conference, are fundamental to analyze the implications of biotechnologies in their fields of applications and issue recommendations that can help institutions and contribute to the society. Conferences such as this one are fundamental to contribute with useful knowledge and to answer to social, political, and ethical questions. Conferences such as this one are fundamental to reflect upon the possibilities and limits of biotechnologies and make rational and responsible decisions about this matter without creating unfundamented fear. I am fully aware that all of the speakers who have taken the floor at this conference are extremely rigorous, and they have made proposals in the on behalf of our society's values. I truly believe that ethical regulation should not be in the hands of a government or the laboratories, but it should be a consensus, a global consensus. Biotechnological surveillance cannot be in the hands of the scientific community only, considering the excessive financial interest and the money that is at stake. Here is where bioethics plays a central role. Without the shadow of a doubt, the International Society on Bioethics and its president, the president of the scientific committee, Marcelo Palacio, has certainly become a legitimate player in suggesting reasonable actions, contributing to inform opinions, or collaborating in the sphere of science and its applications, always ensuring the protection of the human dignity and human rights. And for all of that, I congratulate the SIBI. Lastly, let me thank you for the invitation to participate at this closing act of this magnificent World Conference on Bioethics. And I would like to finish by citing Hans Jonas. He said that we should act with responsibility. Thank you very much.
Gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marcelino Marcos Lindes. I thank you for also paying tribute to Margarita Salas and for giving her daughter a prize. She is unable to come accept it, but she is certainly proud for all of the acts and events that have been held in Asturias as a tribute to her mother.
Alcaldesa de Gijón, doña Ana.
Now, I will give the floor to the mayor of Gijón.
Presidente de la
Dear President of the region of Asturias, dear Marcelo, dear children, I'm happy to have you here. Dear all, let me start by apologizing for being late to a wonderful closing address that I was only able to listen to the final part, and I took some notes, and I was feeling as I was listening to our speaker, I felt that I wanted to talk to him because I heard some brilliant things, and I also have to apologize in advance because I have to leave early. Today is we have a full schedule, full agenda at the City Hall of Gijón. And it's all related to ethics and the need to be responsible. Let me tell you about some of the things that have occurred in Gijón. I think some of them reflect very well what this city is. Today, a project has been presented in sustainable tourism for the historic center of Gijón, aiming at non-touristification and the perseverance and surveillance of the essence of that neighborhood. I think that's a tourism sustainability concept that is, yes, about tourism. But let me tell you that I met with a sports team here at Gijón, the hockey club, that is going to play at the final games of the European League, the European Hockey League. They're going to Catalonia, to Barcelona, for their games, and they are going to wear a T-shirt that has been designed for these matches. And that T-shirt showed the efforts of these players, female players, and their full commitment, together with the directors of the club, the technical staff. But they're engaging with other values, which are the fight against gender-based violence and the fight for full gender equality in collaboration with the sponsor, a business from Gijón that manufactures clothes, sports clothes, and they made this beautiful T-shirt that will be auctioned later on to give the benefits obtained to a non-profit organization that works in the field of gender-based violence and gender equality. And here I am thinking that I will have to leave early to go to a theater. But I don't want to speak of theater as a venue as such, but rather what is going to happen there. The the end of the school year of the drama school of Asturias, boys and girls that have been training in this type of art, which is so related to ethics and culture, the way I see it, that I have to be there. I have to be there with them at the end of their drama training. And I have to recognize that I was feeling nervous because so many events today, and then going to that theater to do something that is very important. I think it is important for that, for those young people, and I want to be a part of it. But as I was hearing our dear Marcelo and the regional president speak, I was thinking, Anna, calm down, because everything that has been discussed here over the past 3 days is paramount. Being able to do something doesn't mean that we have to do it. It's about ethics in micro and macro, in as a collective and as individual. And science must define the limits of that. It's true that there has been a word that is cross-cutting that has been used very much in politics, and it's almost lost its meaning because it has been used so much. But I think there is another important word, which is ethics, that is embedded in all areas of life, including science. That's why I was saying that being able to do something doesn't mean that you have to do it. I believe that all speakers at this fantastic conference has made it clear that we have to always keep ethics in mind. I think that COVID-19 has shown us that we must defend science, we must fight ignorance, we must wage a battle against all enemies of rational knowledge. At the same time, we must not forget about ethics. Ethics places rights, human rights, at the center. And also consciousness, awareness. I think that's one of the things we've learned. I think we've become aware of how vulnerable our life is, but also how vulnerable the environment is. The value of research depends on the value of science and ethics, because the citizens will appreciate scientists not for what they know, but for what they do. And I think that is fundamental. Acting with a scientific awareness, with a rational awareness, but always with ethics in sight. There is no unlimited scientific progress, and we know that very well. and there are no limits without ethics. Ethics is the limits of science, and there is no ethics without a collective responsibility. And let me insist on this because I am not a liberal and not going to call for individual responsibility only. I will call for collective responsibility in the first place, and then the individual responsibility, if you will. I would like to thank you for I would like to thank you for inviting us to participate, and I want to extend my gratitude to the International Society for Bioethics for sending a message calling for responsibility for social, political, and individual responsibility of each and every single one of us. Let me thank the scientific committee, the SIBI staff, and the convention center for their efforts to hold this conference. And special thanks go to Marcelo Palacios, Dr. Palacios, for your efforts, your passion, your work, because in this case, the SIBI is synonymous with work, with research, with improvement. I think your contribution has been great and perseverant. Thank you to all the participants of this Congress, of this conference, and in every conference held by the CB. And to quote Mr. Jovellanos, science is not only to teach us useful things, but also to give us a desire and a hope for peace and beauty, values that makes us better people, better citizens, thus contributing to a welfare that is collective. Congratulations, and I do hope that the fruitful work of this conference is disseminated across the planet. The deadline, the date for the next conference here in Gijón will be announced. We will be waiting you to welcome you here in Gijón. It is an honor for this city to be the host of this conference, and our greatest desire is to meet you again in person in our city next time. We believe we want our home to be your home. Our home is an open one where people from every region of the planet are welcome. With this, I officially declare the 11th Conference on Bioethics closed, and I hereby convene the 12th Conference on Bioethics. Thank you very much.
I am being told that next Congress is in
World Conference on Bioethics will be held in 2023. In 2022. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Meya. Thank you very much, President of the Court of the Principality of Asturias. Somebody at the Congress said that Gijón has been many years, disseminating around the world ethical reflection on science. It is my pride really to recall it. Thank you very much to everybody. And see you in 2 years, 21, 23.